Welcome back, everyone. So you sent in a bunch of really interesting sources on Ethereum's scaling issues, and specifically this thing called Optimism, or OP.
Yep, optimism.
Today, we're going to dive deep into that. It's a layer 2 solution, and we want to figure out what it actually is.
Right. Our mission today is basically to cut through the noise.
Yeah.
Explain optimistic rollups, this big idea they call the superchain.
And figure out why some really big names, like Coinbase, are jumping on board with Optimism's tech.
Exactly. It's a big deal.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What's the actual problem Optimism is trying to fix? Why do we even need these layer 2 things?
Well, it really boils down to a fundamental trade-off with Ethereum, the main blockchain, layer 1.
Okay.
It's incredibly secure, very decentralized, which is great. But the flip side is it's slow, really slow in terms of capacity.
Capacity meaning how many transactions it can handle, like a traffic jam.
Precisely. Think of it like a single-lane road during rush hour. Ethereum can only handle maybe 10, 15 transactions per second globally.
That sounds tiny.
It is. And when everyone tries to use it at once, you get massive congestion.
Yeah.
And that pushes the transaction fees, the gas fees, sky high.
Right, I've heard about those crazy gas fees.
Yeah, they can hit dozens, even hundreds of dollars just for simple action, like using a DeFi app or sending some tokens.
Wow. Okay, so that basically prices out regular users, doesn't it?
Completely. It makes interacting with decentralized applications, DApps, almost impossible unless you're moving large sums. So Optimism was built to fix that, to make Ethereum usable for everyone by moving some of that traffic off the main road.
Got it. So if Ethereum is the slow, congested main road, how does Optimism work? Give us one of your analogies. How could it be faster and cheaper but still secure?
Okay, imagine Ethereum, layer 1, is that super secure but gridlocked main city street.
Yeah.
You trust it, but getting anywhere takes forever.
Makes sense. Secure, slow.
Optimism is like building a brand new multi-lane superhighway right alongside it. It's designed for speed and efficiency.
Okay, a highway.
You take your transaction onto this highway, this layer 2. It gets processed really quickly, very cheaply. But here's the crucial part. The final record, like a compressed summary of all the traffic that went through the highway, gets securely posted back onto the main city street, onto Ethereum layer 1.
Okay. So the fast processing happens off the main chain on the highway?
Right.
But the final proof, the security check, still relies on the main Ethereum chain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get the speed and low cost of the highway, but the ultimate security of the main street.
Yeah.
That's the core idea.
And why optimistic rollups? What's optimistic about it?
Good question. It's called optimistic because the system, well, it operates on an optimistic assumption.
Meaning?
It assumes by default that all the transactions happening on the highway on layer 2 are valid. It doesn't rigorously prove every single one up front.
It just trusts them initially.
Kinda, yeah. That optimism is what makes it fast and cheap.
Yeah.
Verifying everything instantly takes a lot of computational work and time. This way you speed things up significantly. We'll get to the safety net later, though.
Okay, interesting. Now, you mentioned the superchain earlier. The sources really emphasize this. What exactly is that? Is it just one big layer 2 chain, or?
So this is where Optimism's strategy gets really interesting and, frankly, quite ambitious.
Yeah.
Their goal isn't just to be one successful highway next to Ethereum.
Right.
The superchain vision is about providing the standardized blueprint, the core technology, so everyone can build their own compatible highways.
Blueprint?
Yeah, they call it the OP stack. Think of it as a modular open-source toolkit, like Lego bricks for building layer 2s.
Okay, so anyone can use these Legos.
Anyone. Coinbase used it to build their base network. WorldCoin used it for WorldChain. Optimism's own main network, OP Mainnet, uses it. The superchain is the idea that all these different chains, built with the same OP stack toolkit, will eventually connect and function as one seamless, interoperable network.
So it's not just one highway, but a whole interconnected highway system built from the same plan.
Exactly. And the key promise here is shared liquidity and shared state. This means your assets, your data, can move smoothly between, say, OP Mainnet and Base without needing complex bridges or dealing with fragmentation. It's about preventing the layer 2 world from becoming a bunch of isolated islands. They want to build a unified continent.
Okay, that superchain vision makes more sense. Now it's about standardizing the infrastructure. But let's get into the nuts and bolts. If it's optimistic and assumes transactions are good, how does it actually stay secure? What stops someone from cheating the system on this highway?
Right, the safety mechanism. There are two key parts to understand here. First, there's the sequencer.
The sequencer, okay.
Think of the sequencer as the accountant or the traffic controller for the highway. Right now, this role is handled by a single entity, the Optimism Foundation.
Wait, a single entity? That sounds centralized. Isn't that a big problem?
It absolutely is. It's probably their biggest risk, and we definitely need to talk more about that later. But for now, let's focus on its job.
Okay, what does it do?
The sequencer takes your transaction, bundles it together with others into batches, and gives you a very fast, almost instant confirmation. They're using something called flash blocks now, aiming for like 250 millisecond confirmations. Super quick.
So it collects and orders transactions fast, but where's the check for accuracy if it's just one party?
That's where the second part comes in. The fraud proofs and the challenge period.
Right, the safety net.
Exactly. After the sequencer bundles transactions and posts a summary of them onto the main Ethereum chain, Layer 1,
Uh-huh.
a window opens up. It's currently 7 days long.
The challenge period. Okay. What happens during that week?
During that week, anyone, literally anyone, can act as a verifier. They can examine the summary posted by the sequencer.
And if they spot something fishy, like a fraudulent transaction?
They don't just raise a flag. They submit a cryptographic fraud proof directly to the Ethereum Layer 1 smart contract. This proof mathematically demonstrates the sequencer's error.
And Ethereum L1 checks this proof.
Yes. The disputed transaction is effectively rerun on Layer 1 itself, using Layer 1's undisputed security and computational power to determine the truth. If the proof is valid and fraud is confirmed,
And what?
the incorrect state proposed by the sequencer is thrown out, the correct state is restored, and the sequencer who submitted the bad batch faces significant penalties. They lose their staked collateral. It makes cheating very expensive.
Okay, so the security ultimately relies on anyone being able to challenge errors within that 7-day window, using L1 as the judge. But that 7-day wait sounds like a major drawback for users.
It is. That's the single biggest user experience hurdle they have. Because a transaction isn't considered truly final and irreversible until that 7-day challenge window closes without any successful challenges.
So if I want to move my funds back from Optimism to the main Ethereum chain?
You have to wait the full week for that withdrawal to process natively.
A whole week? In crypto time, that's like a year.
Exactly. It's a significant friction point. Now, there are workarounds, third-party bridges have popped up, that offer faster withdrawals, basically paying you instantly and taking on the 7-day wait themselves. But they charge a fee for that service.
Okay, that 7-day wait is definitely a trade-off. But let's put that aside for a second and focus on why someone would deal with that. What are the big upsides for a regular person using Optimism or another OP stack chain like Base?
The benefits are pretty huge, actually.
Yeah.
The number one most immediate advantage is the cost.
Cheaper fees, right.
Massively cheaper. We're talking transactions costing just a few cents, maybe even fractions of a cent, compared to potentially tens or hundreds of dollars on Ethereum L1.
Okay, that's a game changer. Suddenly small transactions make sense.
Exactly. It makes things like micropayments, frequent DeFi interactions, or even using blockchain for gaming actually viable for everyday users. The cost barrier just melts away.
And has this low cost attracted developers and apps? Is there much to actually do on Optimism?
Oh, yeah. The ecosystem is really growing. The sources mentioned over 450 D apps running on the network now.
Wow, 450. Any big names?
Definitely. You've got DeFi giants like AAVE, Uniswap, Synthetics, all running versions on Optimism because their users can actually afford to interact with them regularly. That depth is crucial for network effects.
Let's talk about that Coinbase decision again. You mentioned Base runs on the OP stack. Why was that such a big deal, according to the sources?
It was a massive validation. Think about it. Coinbase is a huge, publicly traded, regulated company. They could have built their own Layer 2 tech from scratch, or used a competitor like Arbitrum or a ZK Rollup.
But they chose Optimism's blueprint.
They chose the open source OP stack. That signals enormous trust from a major institution in Optimism's technology, its security model, and crucially, its long-term superchain vision. It sort of elevates Optimism from just another crypto project to potential standard infrastructure.
That makes sense. I also saw mentions of something called retro PGF, retroactive public goods funding. Sounds unique. What's that about?
Yeah, retro PGF is really interesting and core to Optimism's whole philosophy, their sort of community vibe.
How does it work?
Instead of just giving grants for future work, which is typical, Optimism sets aside a portion of the revenue generated by the network itself.
Okay.
And uses it to reward projects and developers for valuable contributions they've already made to the Optimism ecosystem.
So paying for stuff after it's proven useful.
Exactly. Things like open source software, developer tools, educational content, infrastructure improvements, things that benefit everyone but might not have a direct business model. It creates this cycle where Building useful public goods gets directly rewarded by the network itself. It's designed to foster a self-sustaining ecosystem focused on collective benefit, aligning with their mission to scale Ethereum's values, not just its transactions.
That retro PGF idea is genuinely different. But okay, we've talked up the benefits. Let's bring it back down to earth. We touched on the centralized sequencer. What are the major risks or criticisms facing Optimism right now, according to the research?
Okay, risk number one, and it's the big one we flagged earlier, the centralized sequencer.
Run by the Optimism Foundation.
Correct. Having a single party responsible for ordering transactions creates a single point of failure. If that sequence goes down, the network halts, at least for submitting new transactions. There's also a theoretical risk of censorship, where the sequencer could refuse to include certain transactions.
And how is that controlled? You mentioned a multisig.
Right. Currently, it's managed by what's called a 22 multisig.
Explain that simply. What's the danger there?
It means there are two specific entities, two key holders, and both must agree to make certain changes, like emergency code updates.
Okay, two sounds better than one, but still.
It's still highly centralized control. The critical issue is that this multisig has the power to push immediate code updates. In an emergency, they could effectively bypass the entire 7-day fraud-proof mechanism we talked about.
Whoa. So they could, in theory, change the rules instantly, negating the waiting period.
In theory, yes. It compromises the trustless nature of the system. Now, they argue it's necessary for upgrades and emergencies right now, but decentralizing the sequencer, allowing multiple independent parties to run it, is their absolute top priority on the roadmap. They have to fix this to live up to the decentralized promise.
Okay, that's a huge internal risk. What about external threats? Who are they competing against?
The Layer 2 space is incredibly competitive. There are two main angles. First, their direct rival in the Optimistic Rollup category is Arbitrum.
Arbitrum, right. How are they doing compared to Optimism?
Currently, Arbitrum actually leads Optimism in a key metric called Total Value Locked, or TVL. Basically, there's more money, more capital currently deployed and used on Arbitrum's chain than on Optimism's mainnet.
So more users or bigger users are on Arbitrum for now?
Generally speaking, yes, in terms of sheer value locked up. That's significant competition.
And the second angle of competition?
It's a technological challenge. The rise of ZK rollups. Think projects like ZK Sync, Starknet, Polygon ZK EVM.
ZK, zero knowledge. How are they different?
ZK rollups use much more complex cryptography, these zero-knowledge proofs. The upside is, these proofs allow them to verify transactions and achieve finality almost instantly, right when the batch is posted to Layer 1.
Instantly, so no 7-day waiting period for withdrawals.
Exactly. They don't need the challenge period, because the validity is mathematically proven up front. This offers a potentially massive advantage in user experience and capital efficiency compared to Optimism's 7-day wait. The tech is still maturing, but it's a serious long-term threat.
So Optimism is squeezed between Arbitrum having more current usage and ZK potentially having better tech long-term.
That's a fair summary of the competitive pressure.
Okay, one last risk factor mentioned was the OP token itself. What's the issue there?
It's about supply and selling pressure. The OP token, Optimism's native token, has a large portion of its total supply still locked up.
Locked up how?
Reserved for early investors, core team members, and ecosystem funds. Only about 41% of the total possible tokens are actually circulating in the market right now.
So nearly 60% are still waiting to be released.
Exactly. And these tokens are being released gradually over time through pre-scheduled unlocks. These are often large amounts hitting the market regularly.
Which means?
It means there's a constant, predictable stream of new supply coming onto the market, which tends to put downward pressure on the token's price. It creates potential volatility and a kind of financial headwind the project has to navigate.
You know, this is a great point to quickly pause and remind our listeners of something.
Right. If you're enjoying how we break down these complex projects into simple pieces, use the exact sources you shared, and want more reviews of the projects and articles you send us, make sure to subscribe and stay ahead of the curve.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've covered the problem, the highway analogy, the superchain vision, the mechanics, the benefits, and the pretty significant risks. If you had to boil Optimism down, give us the final, concise summary. What's its essence?
Okay, 2 sentences. Optimism is a currently operational Layer 2 for Ethereum, using the OP Stack blueprint to offer the cheap, fast transactions needed for wider adoption right now.
And its key differentiator.
Its unique long-term play isn't just about being a Layer 2, but about becoming the foundational standard for many Layer 2s through its open source, collaborative superchain strategy.
It really sounds like they're betting heavily on collaboration and that open source shared infrastructure angle, maybe even more than just raw technical specs right now.
I think that's exactly right. It's less purely about tech specs and more about building a coalition, a kind of digital federation or nation built on shared standards.
So a final thought for our listeners to chew on.
Well, consider this. Optimism faces Arbitrum, which currently has more capital locked, and ZK rollups, which promise better tech with instant finality. Given these pressures, Optimism's entire success hinges on whether their big bet, the superchain strategy, can actually create a powerful enough network effect. Can they unite enough builders and users around their open standard to overcome the current centralization risks and the lure of instant ZK finality? That ecosystem strength, that network effect, is really the make-or-break question for whether Optimism becomes the superhighway or just a highway.